I'm Rebecca Torres, 33 years old, and I've spent my entire life being treated like I don't belong in my own family. At my father's 62nd birthday dinner at the Driskill Hotel in Austin, I sat alone at a corner table while 60 guests celebrated around me. The room glowed with candlelight, the air thick with the scent of prime rib and expensive wine. Everyone's plates overflowed with my father's signature dishes, culinary masterpieces from his restaurant empire. Everyone except mine. A single piece of dry bread sat on my plate, hard as a rock, mocking me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My stepmother Patricia glided past, her silk gown shimmering under the chandeliers. She leaned down, her perfume suffocating, and whispered just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "That's fitting for someone like you." My stepsister Amber stood behind her, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. "You've always been nothing, Rebecca. Why start pretending now?" Their words sliced through me, but I didn't flinch. I'd heard worse. I'd survived worse. But tonight was different. Tonight, I hadn't come to beg for acceptance or plead for a place at their table. I'd come with something they never expected. In my clutch purse tucked against my phone was a thumb drive. My heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape, but my hands stayed steady. The room buzzed with laughter, the clinking of crystal glasses, the low murmur of Austin's restaurant elite discussing market expansions and investment opportunities. They had no idea what was about to happen. When the speeches began, when my father stood to thank everyone for coming, I rose from my chair. My legs felt like they might give out, but I forced myself forward, weaving through tables until I reached the front of the room. "Let me show you all something," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. Patricia's smile froze on her face like she'd been hit with a blast of Arctic air. Amber's eyes went wide, her confidence cracking. I handed the thumb drive to the hotel's AV technician, a young guy who'd been setting up the birthday slideshow. He looked confused but plugged it in. The screen behind my father flickered to life, and in that instant, the entire room went silent. Every eye locked on the projection. Every smile faded. "Turn it off," Patricia hissed, her voice shrill, desperate, but it was already too late. The video played, crystal clear, undeniable. 60 guests sat frozen, their champagne glasses suspended mid-air, their faces shifting from confusion to shock to horror. I stood there, watching the truth unfold, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. The screen displayed text messages first, blown up large enough for everyone in that grand dining room to read. Amber's name sat at the top of the thread, her conversation with someone named Trevor Nash. "Make sure the transfer documents are ready by Friday." Dad's too distracted with the birthday plans to notice anything. Trevor's response came quick. "Patricia already signed off on her end. Once your father signs, the restaurants are yours. He won't even realize what he's giving away." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I heard someone at a nearby table whisper, "Oh my God." Another voice said, "Is that real?" The screen shifted to another message, this one from Patricia to Trevor. "I've handled Robert for years. He trusts me completely. Just make sure the paperwork looks legitimate. We can't have him asking questions." Trevor replied with a thumbs up emoji and a note about meeting at second bar plus kitchen to finalize everything. But I wasn't done. The video continued, now showing scanned documents, official-looking papers with Torres Family Restaurant Group letterhead, transfer agreements that would sign over majority ownership of 5 restaurants, the Houston expansion contracts, and something even more valuable to my father than money: my mother's original recipe collection, the handwritten notebooks that had built his entire empire, the secret formulas that made his restaurants legendary across Texas. All of it was being signed away to Amber, with Patricia orchestrating every detail. The camera angle shifted. Now the screen showed actual video footage, grainy but clear enough. Nicole had captured this at Second Bar Plus Kitchen 3 days ago, her phone propped on the bar like she was just scrolling social media. Amber sat in a booth with Trevor, leaning close, her voice low but the microphone picked up every word. Once we get control, we push Rebecca out completely. She's got no legal claim anyway. Then we slowly ease Dad into retirement, maybe suggest he's getting too old to handle the business. By next year, everything will be ours. Trevor nodded, sipping his whiskey. And the recipes? Amber's laugh was cold, calculated. We'll rebrand them, Mom's idea. Turn them into a new line, something fresh and modern. Nobody needs to know they came from Rebecca's mother. That woman's been dead for decades anyway. Who's going to care? The room erupted. Not in applause, but in shocked murmurs that grew louder by the second. I watched my father's face drain of color. He'd been standing at the head table, ready to cut his birthday cake, but now he gripped the edge of the table like he might collapse. Patricia lunged toward the AV booth, her heels clicking frantically against the hardwood floor. "Stop this right now!" she screamed, her composed facade shattered completely. But the technician stepped back, looking at me for guidance. I shook my head. "Keep playing." The final piece of evidence appeared on screen. Bank statements showing money being funneled from the restaurant accounts into a private LLC registered under Amber's name. Dates and amounts, all meticulously documented. Nicole had found these buried in shared cloud storage that Amber had been careless enough to leave accessible. More video played. This time it showed Patricia meeting with a lawyer at a downtown office building. Nicole had followed her there, filming from across the street through the glass windows. The audio was muffled, but subtitles I'd added made the conversation clear. Patricia discussing how to structure the transfer to avoid suspicion, how to make it look like a routine business reorganization that my father would sign without reading too carefully. The lawyer, a sleazy-looking man in an expensive suit, assured her it would hold up legally as long as Robert's signature was genuine. I watched Amber sink into her chair, her face flushed red. She tried to speak but no words came out. Patricia spun toward my father, her hands raised in a pleading gesture. "Gregory, I can explain all of this. It's not what it looks like." She'd called him Gregory. My father's name was Robert. In her panic, she'd confused him with someone else, maybe another man she'd schemed with before. The mistake hung in the air like a confession. Dad's voice came out low and dangerous. "Robert. My name is Robert." Patricia's face went white. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "Robert. I meant Robert. Of course, this is just a misunderstanding." She gestured wildly at the screen. "Rebecca must have doctored these. She's always been jealous of Amber. This is some kind of revenge because she's never been part of this family."
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
But the guests weren't listening to her. A woman in a black dress stood up, her face twisted in disgust. "I invested $500,000 in your Houston expansion. Robert, was any of that real, or was it all part of this con?" A man in a tuxedo pushed back from his table. "I'm calling my lawyer. If they're stealing from family, they're stealing from business partners too." People started gathering their things. Chairs scraped against the floor. Conversations exploded into arguments and accusations. Then the door burst open. Trevor Nash himself walked in, completely unaware of what had been happening. He had a briefcase in hand, probably containing more forged documents. His face was cheerful, oblivious. He scanned the room, spotted Amber and started to wave. Then he saw the screen. His expression crumbled. His briefcase slipped from his fingers and hit the floor with a crash that echoed through the now nearly silent room. "It's all true," Trevor stammered, his voice shaking. "Every word. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just did what they asked. Patricia and Amber, they planned everything. I just handled the paperwork." His confession hit like a bomb. Whatever small chance Patricia and Amber had of talking their way out of this evaporated instantly. Amber shot to her feet, pointing at Trevor. "Shut up, you idiot. Just shut up." But Trevor kept talking, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "They promised me a percentage once they sold off the restaurants. Said we'd all make millions. I didn't think anyone would get hurt. It was just business. Just restructuring. That's what Patricia called it. Just restructuring." He looked at Robert, his eyes pleading. "Mr. Torres, I'm sorry. I didn't know you had no idea what you were signing. They told me you were in on it." My father stood frozen, his hands clenched into fists. People crowded around him, some offering support, others demanding answers about their own investments. But his eyes found mine across the chaos. For the first time in longer than I could remember, he really looked at me. Not through me. Not past me. At me. His face held something I'd never seen before. When he looked my way. Respect, recognition. Maybe even shame. Patricia made one last desperate play. She grabbed Robert's arm, her voice syrupy sweet, despite the hysteria underneath. "Darling, you know me. I would never betray you. Rebecca has always had an overactive imagination. She's clearly manipulated this footage somehow. We can sort this out privately. Just the family." But Robert pulled his arm away like her touch burned him. Just don't." His voice was hollow, defeated. "I trusted you. I gave you everything. You were supposed to love Amber like your own daughter, not turn her into a thief." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. He'd never defended me that way. Never protected me from Patricia's cruelty, or Amber's constant belittling. But now that his business and his late wife's legacy were threatened, suddenly betrayal mattered. Still, I'd take it. I'd take this moment of him finally seeing what I'd endured for years. A woman approached me, one of Austin's most prominent food critics. She'd been sitting near the front, watching everything unfold. Her expression was soft, sympathetic. "That took incredible courage," she said quietly. "Whatever happens next, you did the right thing." Another guest, a restaurant owner I'd recognized from industry events, gave me a respectful nod. "Your mother would be proud. Those recipes were hers. You protected her legacy." Their words settled over me like a warm blanket. For so long, I'd been the family embarrassment, the daughter nobody wanted to acknowledge. Tonight, strangers were treating me with more kindness than my own family ever had. The AV technician finally stopped the video. The screen went dark, leaving only the chandelier light, and the collective shock of 60 people who'd witnessed a family implosion. Security had been called. 2 uniformed officers entered the dining room, summoned by the hotel manager who'd been watching from the doorway. Patricia tried to compose herself, smoothing her dress, lifting her chin. But her hands shook. Amber sat slumped in her chair, mascara running down her face. All her usual confidence evaporated. Trevor stood in the middle of the room, like he didn't know where to go or what to do. When one of the officers approached him, he didn't resist.
He just started talking again, spilling more details about offshore accounts and forged signatures and meetings held in secret. Every word dug the grave deeper for Patricia and Amber. My father finally moved. He walked slowly toward me, each step heavy. The crowd parted for him. When he reached me, he stopped, opened his mouth, closed it again. I could see him struggling for words. "You knew," he finally said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "For 3 weeks," I answered. "Nicole and I found the messages, tracked their meetings, gathered everything." I tried to tell myself there had to be some explanation, some reason that made sense, but there wasn't. "They were stealing from you. From all of us. From Mom's memory." His eyes glistened. He looked older, suddenly. The weight of betrayal aging him in real time. "Your mother's recipes. They were gonna take those?" I pulled out my phone, opened a folder, and showed him. "I've got copies of all of Mom's original notebooks. I photographed every page years ago, just in case. They can't touch them. They can't erase her." Relief and pain warred on his face. He reached out like he might hug me, then stopped, unsure if he had the right after years of distance. I made the decision for him, stepping back slightly. We could rebuild our relationship, maybe, but not tonight. Not in the wreckage of this disaster. Not when he'd let me suffer for so long without intervention. Patricia's voice cut through the moment. "This is absurd. We're leaving. Come on, Amber." But when they tried to walk toward the exit, several guests blocked their path. A tall man in a gray suit, someone I recognized as a major investor, crossed his arms. "Nobody's leaving until the police have statements from everyone. You're not running away from this." Another voice chimed in. "I've got my lawyer on the phone right now. We're filing charges. Fraud, embezzlement, theft of intellectual property. You're done." The officers stepped forward, professional and calm. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us, both of you. And sir, you too." The last part was directed at Trevor. Patricia sputtered protests. Amber tried to argue about her rights, about false accusations. Trevor just hung his head and walked toward the door with the officers. Patricia and Amber followed, escorted out of the Driskill Hotel while 60 guests watched in stunned silence. As they passed me, Amber hissed under her breath, "I hope you're happy. You destroyed everything." I met her eyes, my voice steady and clear. "I saved everything. There's a difference." The doors closed behind them. The dining room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, conversations resumed. Hushed at first, then growing louder. People clustered in small groups, processing what they'd witnessed. Some approached Robert, offering support or demanding explanations about their business dealings. Others left quickly, probably to call their lawyers or accountants. I found Nicole standing near the bar. She'd been filming the whole confrontation on her phone, documenting everything for potential legal proceedings. When she saw me, she grinned and pulled me into a fierce hug. "You were amazing," she whispered. "Absolutely amazing." I held on to her, letting myself feel the full weight of what I'd just done. My hands started shaking, delayed shock setting in. Nicole felt it and squeezed tighter. "Come on, let's get you out of here." We slipped out through a side entrance, avoiding the main lobby, where I knew reporters might already be gathering. Austin's food industry was small enough that news like this would spread instantly. By tomorrow, every restaurant owner, food blogger, and culinary journalist in Texas would know what happened. Nicole drove me back to my small apartment in South Congress, neither of us speaking much. What was there to say? I'd just blown up my family in front of 60 witnesses. When we got to my place, I collapsed onto my secondhand couch, still in my simple black dress that stood in such stark contrast to Patricia and Amber's designer gowns. Nicole made tea, puttering around my tiny kitchen like she owned it. We'd been friends since high school, and she knew exactly what I needed. Space to process, quiet to think, and someone nearby who understood. She set a mug in front of me and sat down, tucking her legs under her. "Do you regret it?" she asked gently. I thought about the question. Did I regret exposing Patricia and Amber? Did I regret ruining my father's birthday? Did I regret the years of pain and neglect that had led to this moment? I wrapped my hands around the warm mug and shook my head. No. They would have destroyed everything my mother built. They would have erased her completely. I couldn't let that happen. Nicole nodded, satisfied. Good, because what you did tonight, that's going to change everything, not just for your family, for you. She was right, though I didn't fully understand it yet. That night at the Driskill Hotel, with dry bread on my plate and truth on a thumb drive, I'd taken control of my own story. I'd refused to stay invisible. And while the fallout would be messy and painful and complicated, I'd finally stood up for myself and for my mother's legacy. The woman who had been silenced by death would have her voice heard through me. That piece of dry bread, meant to humiliate me, had become the catalyst for everything. Sometimes the smallest insults carry the biggest consequences. 3 weeks before that night at the Driskill Hotel, I sat in my cramped South Congress apartment staring at an email that felt like a trap. The subject line read, "Robert Torres' 62nd birthday celebration," and the sender was Patricia's personal assistant. Not Patricia herself, not my father, an assistant. That told me everything I needed to know about where I ranked in their world. I ran a food blog called Shimmering Truths, documenting recipes and stories from Austin's overlooked culinary voices. The people who cooked in food trucks and small family kitchens, the ones who'd never get a James Beard nomination, but made food that mattered. My apartment reflected my work, cluttered with ring lights positioned over a makeshift test kitchen, camera equipment stacked on shelves, and a laptop covered in stickers from local Austin eateries. My mother passed away when I was 6 years old, leaving behind memories that felt more like dreams than reality. I remember her hands covered in flour, the way she'd hum while rolling out tortilla dough, the warmth of our kitchen that always smelled like coriander and roasted garlic. She'd built the first Torres restaurant from nothing, a tiny place on East 6th Street that served her grandmother's recipes. My dad had the business sense, but Mom had the magic. Her food made people weep with joy. After she died, Dad threw himself into expanding the business, opening restaurant after restaurant, building an empire on the foundation of her recipes. He rarely talked about her. It hurt too much, I think. Or maybe he just moved on. By the time I turned 8, Patricia entered our lives like a cold front sweeping in. Through Texas in January, she brought Amber with her, a 5-year-old girl with blonde ringlets and a practiced pout that got her anything she wanted. Patricia was elegant and polished, everything my mother hadn't been. Mom was warmth and chaos and creativity. Patricia was calculated precision. She looked at our house, at me, at Dad's growing restaurant business, and I watched her eyes light up with dollar signs. Dad was too lonely and overwhelmed to notice. He married her within a year. That's when my life split into before and after. Before Patricia, I was Daddy's little helper in the restaurant kitchen, learning to dice onions and measure spices. After Patricia, I was the shadow in the corner, the reminder of a dead woman nobody wanted to talk about. Patricia dressed Amber in clothes from Nordstrom and Neiman Marcus, while I got hand-me-downs from cousins I barely knew. Amber took ballet lessons at a prestigious studio in Westlake Hills. I asked once if I could join a cooking class at a community center. Patricia's response was ice cold. We can't afford to waste money on hobbies that won't lead anywhere. Meanwhile, she was dropping thousands on Amber's pageant dresses. When I was 10, Dad hosted a dinner party at our Westlake Hills house for potential investors. I'd spent the afternoon helping our housekeeper set the table, carefully folding napkins the way Mom had taught me. I asked Dad if I could sit with everyone, maybe help serve the appetizers I'd watched the caterers prepare. I wanted to be part of his world, to show him I understood the restaurant business that meant so much to him. Patricia overheard. She pulled me aside into the hallway, her grip tight on my shoulder, her voice low and venomous. You're not part of this. These are important people. They don't need to see you hovering around. Go to your room. Amber had been standing nearby, watching. She was only 7, but she'd already learned to mirror Patricia's cruelty. Yeah, Rebecca, nobody wants you here anyway. You're just going to embarrass everyone. I retreated upstairs, listening to the laughter and conversation floating up from below, feeling like a ghost in my own home. Dad never asked where I had gone. He never noticed I wasn't there. That became the pattern. Patricia and Amber in the spotlight, me in the shadows. Dad too busy building his empire to see what was happening under his own roof. My escape came through a beat-up video camera I bought at a pawn shop when I was 15. I started filming everything, documenting the small restaurants and food vendors around Austin, the stories nobody else was telling. Patricia caught me once, editing footage on our family computer. "This is what you waste your time on?" she sneered as I pieced together an interview with a tamale vendor. "These people don't matter, Rebecca. They're not going to make you successful. Focus on something worthwhile." Amber laughed from the doorway. "Your little movies are so sad. Nobody's ever going to watch them." But I kept filming. It was the only thing that felt like mine. When I graduated high school, I told Dad I wanted to study culinary arts and media, maybe blend cooking with storytelling. He was in his office, barely looking up from spreadsheets. "That's nice, sweetheart." Patricia had other opinions. She cornered me the next day in the kitchen. "Your father's not paying for some silly cooking school. If you want an education, figure it out yourself. Amber's going to UT Austin to study business. That's where the money goes, to someone who will actually contribute to this family." Amber got a full ride on Dad's dime, an apartment near campus, a monthly allowance that could have paid my rent 3 times over. I cobbled together scholarships, worked 3 part-time jobs, and lived in a house with 5 roommates. I studied food media and digital storytelling at Austin Community College, then transferred to a small program at Texas State. Every dollar I earned went toward tuition or camera equipment. Patricia threw Amber a massive graduation party at the family's flagship restaurant. 200 guests, live music, champagne towers. I wasn't invited. I found out about it from social media, seeing photos of Amber in a white dress surrounded by flowers and well-wishers. Dad sent me a text when I graduated. "Congratulations, Rebecca. Proud of you." That was it. No party, no celebration, no acknowledgement that I'd done it entirely on my own while his stepdaughter had everything handed to her. The distance between us grew wider every year. I stopped going to family dinners, stopped calling, stopped expecting anything. I poured everything into my blog, into documenting Austin's hidden food stories, into preserving the kind of culinary traditions my mother had valued. I won a few small local awards. A neighborhood magazine featured one of my recipe videos. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Who'd watched me endure years of Patricia's calculated cruelty and Amber's casual dismissal. When that email invitation arrived, Nicole was sprawled on my couch, scrolling through her phone. I showed it to her. She read it twice, her expression darkening. "You're not actually considering going, are you?" Her voice was sharp. "Rebecca, they don't want you there. This is just Patricia covering her bases so she can claim she invited you." I knew she was right. The email was formal and cold. No personal message from Dad. No mention of it being important to him that I attend. Just logistics. Date, time, location, dress code. Like I was a business associate rather than his daughter. My first instinct was to delete it and pretend I'd never seen it. But something stopped me. Maybe it was exhaustion from years of being erased. Maybe it was anger that had been simmering for decades. Maybe it was just the fact that I was tired of hiding. Nicole watched me, reading my face. "Don't tell me you're thinking about going." "I am," I said slowly. "Not to make peace, not to play happy family, but I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of pretending this is okay." She sat up straight, her eyes intense. "Then go. But don't go to beg for scraps. Go to show them you're not the scared kid they've spent years pushing around." Her words hit something deep inside me. I thought about all the moments that still burned. The Christmas when Patricia gave Amber a diamond bracelet and gave me a gift card to Target. Amber's sweet 16 at the country club, while my 16th birthday passed without acknowledgement. The time Patricia told relatives I was away at school when I was actually just upstairs in my room because she didn't want to explain my presence. Every slight had built a wall between me and them, but it had also built something in me: resilience, determination, a refusal to disappear completely. I wasn't going to that dinner to win their approval. I was going to exist in their space, to refuse to be erased. 2 weeks later, everything changed. Nicole burst into my apartment on a Tuesday evening, her face flushed, eyes wild. I was testing a recipe for pozole, my mother's version that I'd been trying to recreate from memory. Nicole barely noticed the pot simmering on the stove. She grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the couch. "You need to hear this," she said, her voice urgent. "I was at Second Bar downtown this afternoon, working on a client proposal. Guess who I saw?" "Amber," I said flatly. It wasn't unusual. Second Bar was trendy, exactly the kind of place Amber frequented. Nicole shook her head. "Amber and some guy I've seen at family events. Trevor or something? They were in a booth in the back corner talking low. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I was sitting close enough to hear some of it." She pulled out her phone, opening a voice memo. "I recorded part of it. I just had this feeling something was off." She hit play. The audio was muffled, background noise from the bar making it hard to hear, but Amber's voice came through clearly enough. "The transfer papers are almost ready. Trevor's worried Dad might actually read them before signing, but Mom says he never does. He trusts her completely." A male voice responded, deeper, harder to make out. "And the timeline?" Amber's laugh was cold. "Birthday dinner is perfect. Everyone will be distracted. Once he signs, we move fast. By the time anyone realizes what happened, it'll be too late." The recording cut off. Nicole looked at me, waiting for my reaction. My heart was pounding. Transfer papers? What were they transferring? The restaurants? I felt sick. Patricia and Amber were planning something that involved my father signing away control of his own business. Nicole nodded grimly. "That's what I thought too. This isn't just them being terrible. This is fraud." I stood up, pacing my small living room, my mind racing. Dad had built Torres Family Restaurant Group over 30 years, 5 successful locations, plans to expand into Houston, a reputation as one of Austin's premier dining
establishments. It was his life's work, built on my mother's recipes and his business acumen, and Patricia was scheming to take it away from him. Why? Nicole supplied the obvious answer: money, control. With your dad out of the way, they get everything. And you get nothing. You've never been in the will, never been part of the business discussions. They've made sure of that. She was right. I'd been systematically excluded from every aspect of the family business. When Dad talked about succession planning, it was always about Amber, about preparing her to eventually take over. Never mind that I was the one who'd inherited Mom's talent in the kitchen, who actually understood food. Amber's skill set began and ended with looking good in photos for the restaurant's social media. But Patricia had positioned her as the heir apparent, and Dad had gone along with it. Now they were apparently taking it a step further, cutting Dad out entirely. "We need to find out more," I said, my voice steady despite the anger burning in my chest. Nicole was already nodding. "I know Amber's password for her cloud storage. I did some freelance work for her last year. Remember, that marketing campaign for the restaurant's anniversary? She never changed her login. It's worth checking." We huddled over my laptop, the puzzle forgotten on the stove. Nicole logged into the shared drive, and we started digging through files. Most of it was mundane: photos from events, restaurant menus, marketing materials. Then we found a folder labeled Private Business, buried 3 layers deep. Inside were email threads between Amber and Trevor Nash. We opened the first one and started reading. My hands shook as the full scope of their plan became clear. Trevor was a business consultant, supposedly helping with the Houston expansion. In reality, he was helping Patricia and Amber draft documents that would transfer majority ownership of Torres family restaurant group to Amber. The emails laid it all out. Patricia had convinced Dad that this was part of estate planning, a way to reduce taxes and ensure smooth succession. She'd positioned it as a gift to Amber, preparing her to lead the company into the next generation. But the fine print told a different story. Once Amber had majority control, the plan was to force Dad into early retirement, citing health concerns or age. They'd already drafted a statement about him wanting to step back and enjoy his golden years. Then they'd rebrand the restaurants, slowly phasing out my mother's original recipes in favor of what they called a more modern marketable approach. They were going to erase her completely, strip away everything that made Torres restaurants special, and turn them into generic upscale dining experiences. I found an email from Patricia to Trevor that made my blood run cold. Make sure the language about Rebecca is clear. She has no claim to any of this. Her mother's recipes are company property, not family heirlooms. If she tries to contest anything, we need ironclad documentation that she was never a stakeholder, company property. My mother's recipes, the ones she'd developed in our family kitchen, the ones I'd watched her create and perfect, reduced to corporate assets. I thought of her notebook, the one she'd filled with handwritten recipes and notes, passed down from her grandmother. I'd found it after she died, hidden in a kitchen drawer. Dad never knew I had it. I'd kept it safe all these years. A connection to her that nobody could take away. Except now they were trying to do exactly that. Nicole pointed at the screen. Look at this. An attachment labeled Transfer Agreement Draft. We opened it. Legal jargon filled the page, but the essence was clear. Robert Torres would sign over 60% ownership of all restaurant properties, trademarks and intellectual property, including all recipes and culinary processes, to Amber Patricia Winters. There was a clause about it being irrevocable, another about dispute resolution, that heavily favored Amber. At the bottom, Patricia's signature was already scrawled, listed as witness and co-signer. They're doing this at the birthday dinner, Nicole said quietly. That's why the timing matters. Big event, lots of distractions, Dad's emotional and celebratory. They'll slip these papers in with other documents, maybe birthday cards or celebration materials. He'll sign without really looking. I saved everything to a thumb drive, my hands moving on autopilot. We needed more than emails. We needed proof of intent, something that showed this wasn't just poor business planning, but deliberate theft. Nicole had an idea. I can follow Amber tomorrow. She mentioned meeting Trevor to finalize documents. If I can record them actually discussing the plan, talking about deceiving your father, that's evidence that can't be disputed. The next afternoon, Nicole tracked Amber to Second Bar again. She set up at the bar with her laptop, looking like any other Austin professional working remotely. Her phone was propped against her water glass, camera facing the booth where Amber and Trevor sat. I stayed home, editing footage for my blog, my phone clutched in my hand waiting for updates. Nicole's first text came through at 3:15. They're here, talking openly. These idiots think they're untouchable. 20 minutes later, she sent an audio file. I downloaded it immediately, plugging in headphones, my heart hammering. Amber's voice came through crystal clear. Once Dad signs tomorrow night, we move the Houston expansion funds into the new account. He'll think it's still business as usual, but we'll have control. Trevor's response was equally damning. Your mom's got the lawyer ready to file the paperwork, first thing Friday morning. By the time your dad realizes what happened, it'll be legally binding. He can contest it, but that'll take months and cost him everything. Amber laughed, that same cold sound from the first recording. He won't fight. He's too tired, and honestly he'll probably be relieved to step back. Mom's been telling him for months that he looks exhausted, that he should think about retirement. We're just helping him make the decision. There was more. Trevor mentioned offshore accounts, where they'd funnel profits. Amber talked about selling off the original East 6th Street location, the restaurant my mother had founded, because the property value was worth more than keeping it operational. She called it a sentimental money pit. They discussed which employees to fire first, which vendors to replace with cheaper alternatives. They were planning to strip mine everything my father had built, everything my mother had created, and extract maximum profit before running the business into the ground. I felt rage like I'd never experienced before. This wasn't just about me being excluded or mistreated. This was about destroying my mother's legacy, about betraying my father's trust, about ruining something that had brought joy to thousands of people over 3 decades. Nicole came back to my apartment that evening, with more recordings, more evidence. We spent hours organizing everything: emails, documents, audio recordings, even some screenshots from Amber's social media, where she'd hinted at big changes coming to the family business. We built a comprehensive timeline showing exactly how the scheme would unfold. The birthday dinner was 2 days away. I made a decision. I wasn't just going to expose this privately, confront Patricia and Amber behind closed doors, where they could lie and manipulate. I was going to show everyone, every investor, every business partner, every society figure who'd treated me like I didn't exist while celebrating Patricia and Amber. They'd all see the truth at once. Nicole helped me create a video presentation, embedding all the evidence in a clear chronological format. Text messages appeared on screen with timestamps. Audio played over relevant photos. Documents were highlighted to show the most damning clauses. We added captions for clarity, making sure nothing could be misunderstood or explained away. The night before the dinner, I barely slept. I kept thinking about my mother, about how she'd poured her heart into creating food that brought people together. She died too young, never got to see how successful the restaurants became, but her recipes had lived on, her creativity and passion preserved in every dish Dad's chefs prepared. Now Patricia and Amber wanted to erase all of that, replace it with focus-grouped menu items and cost-effective ingredients. Over my dead body. I thought about my father too, complicated feelings swirling. He'd failed me in so many ways. He'd let Patricia treat me like garbage. He'd chosen comfort and convenience over protecting his own daughter. But he'd loved my mother. He'd built something real on the foundation she'd created. He deserved to know he was being betrayed. The morning of the dinner, I went to visit my mother's grave. She was buried in Austin Memorial Park, a quiet cemetery on the north side of town. I hadn't been there in months, too busy with work and life, and trying to survive. I sat on the grass next to her headstone, tracing her name with my fingers. Maria Elena Torres, beloved wife and mother, chef extraordinaire. I told her everything, about Patricia's cruelty and Amber's schemes, about the plan to steal the restaurants and erase her recipes, about the thumb drive in my purse that held the power to stop them. I don't know if you'd approve of what I'm about to do, I said aloud, not caring if anyone heard me talking to a gravestone. It's going to be brutal. It's going to hurt Dad. But they can't take what you built, Mom. They can't pretend you never mattered. The wind picked up, rustling through the oak trees overhead. I took it as a sign. Approval or just coincidence, it didn't matter. I was doing this. That afternoon, I got ready slowly. I didn't have money for expensive clothes, so I wore a simple black dress I'd bought on sale at a thrift store. No jewelry except the small silver cross my mother had given me when I was 5, right before she died. I did my makeup carefully, wanting to look composed and strong. Nicole came over to help, her presence grounding me. "You're sure about this?" she asked one more time. I nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. She hugged me tight. "Then let's go take them down." We drove to the Driskill Hotel in her car, parking in the garage. I clutched my small purse with the thumb drive inside, my palms sweating. Nicole squeezed my hand. "You've got this. Remember, you're not the scared kid anymore. You're the woman who built a career from nothing. You're your mother's daughter." Her words filled me with strength. We walked into the hotel together, through the ornate lobby with its stained glass and marble columns. The private dining room was on the second floor. I could hear music and laughter as we approached. Nicole peeled off to position herself strategically in the room, ready to film everything on her phone for documentation. I took a deep breath and walked in alone. The room was exactly as I'd imagined, elegant and excessive, filled with Austin's elite. I recognized food critics, restaurant owners, investors, people who'd praised my father's business for years, people who'd never once acknowledged me. A young server approached, his smile professional. "Name please." "Rebecca Torres," I said clearly. His eyes flickered with something, recognition maybe, or pity. He checked his tablet, then led me through the room, past the main tables where guests were already seated, champagne flowing, past the head table where my father stood talking animatedly with a group of men in expensive suits. The server led me to a small table crammed in the corner near the emergency exit. The chair wobbled when I sat down. The tablecloth had a stain, and on the plate in front of me, centered perfectly like it was a deliberate statement, sat a single piece of bread, dry, hard, probably left over from lunch service. I stared at it, the symbolism so blatant it was almost funny. This was what I was worth to them. Not even fresh bread, just scraps.
I looked up and saw Patricia watching me from across the room. She stood near the head table in a silk gown that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Her smile was satisfied. Cruel. She'd ordered this. She'd made sure I was placed here, treated like this, humiliated one more time. Amber appeared at her side, wearing a glittering dress that caught the light. She leaned close to Patricia, whispered something, and they both looked at me. Amber's smirk was unmistakable. They thought this was another victory, another moment of putting me in my place. They had no idea what was coming. Patricia glided over, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She stopped at my table, looking down at me like I was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. "I hope you're comfortable, Rebecca. This seemed appropriate for you." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "You've always preferred staying out of the way." I met her eyes, my voice calm. "Very thoughtful. Thank you." My composure seemed to surprise her. She'd expected tears or anger, some reaction she could use to paint me as unstable or dramatic. Instead, I just smiled politely. Amber came over too, unable to resist piling on. "At least they gave you something. Be grateful for that. You're lucky Dad even wanted you here." I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd grown up with every advantage, every opportunity, and had learned nothing except how to take from others. "Soon everyone here is going to see who should really be grateful," I said quietly. She frowned, not understanding. Patricia grabbed her arm. "Come on, let's not waste time on this." They walked away, rejoining the celebration. I sat alone at my corner table, the dry bread untouched, and waited. The thumb drive in my purse felt like it was burning against my side. I watched the room fill up, 60 guests total, everyone who mattered in Austin's food scene. My father moved through the crowd, shaking hands, laughing at jokes. He looked happy, proud. He had no idea his wife and stepdaughter were about to rob him blind. He had no idea his biological daughter was about to save him. The speeches would start soon, and when they did, I'd be ready. The dinner service began with servers gliding through the room carrying plates of my father's signature dishes. Seared scallops with chipotle lime butter, braised short ribs with mole sauce. Every recipe traced back to my mother's notebooks. I watched guests exclaim over the food, praising flavors they didn't know came from a woman this family was planning to erase. My corner table received no such service. The dry bread remained my only offering. Patricia moved between tables with practiced grace, playing the perfect hostess. Amber shadowed her, learning the performance. They were synchronized in their cruelty and ambition. My father stood at the head table, genuinely happy, surrounded by congratulations. He'd let Patricia rewrite the family history, while I became a footnote nobody acknowledged. Finally, dessert arrived. A massive tres leches cake decorated with gold leaf. The room erupted in applause. Patricia stood beside my father, arm linked through his, playing devoted wife. Amber on his other side, the dutiful daughter. The perfect family portrait built on lies. The master of ceremonies tapped the microphone. It's time for toasts and tributes. Patricia went first, speaking about dedication and vision, family values and legacy. She thanked everyone, mentioned Amber's contributions. She didn't mention me once. Amber took the microphone next, talking about growing up in the restaurant world, calling my father Dad without hesitation. She mentioned plans for expansion, already talking like she owned the business. I saw Trevor near the back, briefcase in hand, containing the fraudulent documents. Several business partners spoke next, praising integrity while his wife and stepdaughter were preparing to rob him blind. Finally, the MC asked if anyone else wanted to share. I stood up, my chair scraping loud enough to draw attention. I have something I'd like to share. My voice was steady and clear. Heads turned. Patricia's expression shifted to alarm. I walked toward the front, reaching the AV station. I pulled the thumb drive from my purse. I need you to play this. Patricia moved to intercept. Rebecca, this isn't the time. Whatever grievance you think you have can be addressed privately. I ignored her, speaking to the technician. This is important. Everyone here needs to see it. He took the thumb drive and plugged it in. The slideshow disappeared, replaced by a black screen. Patricia grabbed my arm. You need to stop this right now. I pulled free and faced the room. I'm Rebecca Torres, Robert's daughter. Most of you don't know me because I've been systematically excluded from this family. But tonight, I'm here to show you something everyone needs to see. Patricia tried to cut in. Rebecca has always been prone to drama. She's upset about not being involved in business decisions. Actually, I said, looking at her, I'm here to prevent a crime. The word hung in the air. Rebecca, what are you talking about? My father asked. I turned to the technician. Play the video. The screen came to life, showing text messages, Amber's conversation with Trevor, timestamps visible. Make sure the transfer documents are ready by Friday. Dad's too distracted to notice anything. The room erupted in murmurs. Amber pushed forward. That's private. You had no right. What's theft is stealing someone's business through fraud. The video continued, showing more messages, Patricia's instructions about making paperwork look legitimate. My father stepped closer, reading every word. Patricia, what is this? She tried to salvage it. Robert, this is all being taken out of context. But the video showed the actual transfer agreement, 60% of Torres Family Restaurant Group to Amber.
My father turned to Patricia. You planned this? You were going to steal my business? Patricia tried approaching, hands raised. Robert, please, this is a misunderstanding. Rebecca's always been jealous. But nobody listened. A man stood up. I'm Richard Connolly. We've invested based on trust in your integrity. Our partnership is terminated immediately. Other voices joined. Investments pulled. Contracts reviewed. Business relationships crumbling. Patricia grew desperate, turning to guests. Rebecca has mental health issues. She's doing this to hurt us. You can't gaslight your way out of documented fraud, I said. Everyone saw the messages, heard the recordings. A commotion at the entrance. Trevor walked in carrying his briefcase, oblivious. He spotted Amber and started forward. Perfect timing. We can get those signatures. He stopped, registering the atmosphere. What happened? Amber hissed. You idiot! Trevor looked at the screen, then at me. Recognition dawned. His briefcase slipped, hitting the floor. Papers spilled everywhere. Transfer agreements, signature pages. It's all true, Trevor blurted, voice shaking. Patricia and Amber planned everything. I just handled paperwork. They told me Robert was on board, but I knew he didn't know. They said he'd sign without reading. I was supposed to witness signatures tonight. The room erupted. My father stared at Patricia. How long have you been planning this? Years, she spat. Years of watching you pour everything into preserving Maria's memory. You never moved on. You never really loved me. Her bitterness was toxic. I gave you Amber, a real daughter, but you still had attachment to Rebecca. Get out, my father said, voice steel. Both of you. Patricia tried once more. Think about the scandal. If this goes public, everything's ruined. It's already public, I said. There are 60 witnesses here. Hotel security appeared. Ladies, we need you to leave. Patricia drew herself up. We're not going anywhere. We're family. Ma'am, Mr. Torres has asked you to leave. Please exit quietly or we'll call police. Amber turned on me. You destroyed everything. You ruined our lives. I protected my father and my mother's legacy. The only thing I destroyed was your scheme. As they exited escorted by security, the room watched in silence. Trevor tried following, but an officer stopped him. Mr. Torres may want to speak with you. Trevor sank into a chair, head in hands. My father picked up a transfer agreement, reading carefully. His hands shook. I walked over, holding my mother's recipe notebook. This is Mom's original book. I've had it since she died. I wanted to make sure it stayed safe. He took it with shaking hands, tears filling his eyes. You saved everything, he whispered. I saved what mattered, I replied quietly. The room began to empty slowly. Some guests left quickly, wanting distance from the scandal. Others lingered in clusters, phones out as they texted contacts across Austin's business community. The whispers were relentless. Did you see that? Can you believe Patricia would do something like that? I always thought something was off about that family. A few approached my father cautiously, offering measured support while simultaneously protecting their own interests. Robert, I'm sorry you're going through this. Let's schedule a meeting next week to discuss our contracts moving forward. Nicole appeared at my side, having filmed the entire confrontation on her phone for documentation. She squeezed my hand hard. You did it! You actually did it! I nodded, feeling the adrenaline that had carried me through the last hour starting to drain away. My hands began trembling. The weight of what I'd just done settled on my shoulders like a physical force. I'd exposed the truth, prevented the theft, protected my mother's memory, but I'd also detonated a bomb in the middle of my father's birthday celebration, destroyed whatever remained of our family structure, and created a scandal that would dominate Austin's food industry gossip for months. My father still held my mother's recipe notebook, his fingers tracing her handwriting on the yellowed pages. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by betrayal. The confident restaurant mogul who'd commanded the room an hour ago had been replaced by a tired old man trying to process that his wife of 20 years had been systematically planning to destroy him. He looked up at me, his eyes searching mine for something. Forgiveness, maybe. Understanding. Permission to rebuild what we'd never really had. Why didn't you come to me privately? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Why expose this in front of everyone? The question hung between us, loaded with decades of complicated history. I could have lied, could have said something diplomatic about protecting the evidence or ensuring witnesses, but I'd spent my whole life swallowing truths to keep the peace. Not tonight. Because you wouldn't have believed me, I said quietly. If I'd come to you alone, Patricia would have convinced me I was lying. She would have twisted everything, made me look unstable or vindictive. You would have chosen her version over mine. You always have. The truth of that statement hit him visibly. He opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. He couldn't deny it. How many times over the 20 years he'd been married to Patricia had he pieced over conflict, assumed the best, tolerated the friction between Patricia and me for the sake of family harmony and business continuity?
Years had I tried to tell him about Patricia's cruelty? How many times had he dismissed my complaints as teenage drama or sibling rivalry? He'd chosen comfort over confrontation, chosen to believe the lies because they were easier than facing the reality that he'd brought a predator into our home. I needed witnesses, I continued. I needed people who couldn't be manipulated or gaslit. I needed the truth to be undeniable. A woman approached us, one of Austin's most respected food critics. She'd been sitting near the front, watching everything unfold with journalistic intensity. Rebecca, she said gently, I'm Angela Morrison from the Austin Food Chronicle. I know this isn't the time, but I'd like to speak with you about your mother's recipes, about preserving culinary legacy. What you did tonight, exposing this scheme, that takes remarkable courage. Your mother would be proud. Her words were kind, but I heard the subtext. She wanted the story. This scandal would be front-page news, and she wanted exclusive access. Not tonight, I said firmly. Maybe later. But right now, I need to process everything. She nodded, understanding but disappointed. She handed me a business card. When you're ready. This story deserves to be told properly. She moved away, already typing on her phone, probably drafting the article that would make tomorrow's deadline. Around us, the dining room continued its slow dissolution. Servers cleared tables while avoiding eye contact with anyone involved in the drama. The hotel manager hovered near the entrance, clearly calculating liability and damage control. Trevor still sat slumped in his chair, surrounded by the scattered documents from his briefcase. A middle-aged man in an expensive suit approached him, introducing himself as an attorney. Trevor's face lifted with desperate hope. A lawyer had arrived, though whether to help him or to serve him with papers wasn't immediately clear. The two men spoke in low tones, Trevor gesturing frantically while the lawyer took notes with an impassive expression. Whatever legal nightmare was about to unfold, Trevor was realizing he was in far deeper than he'd anticipated. My father finally spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your mother's recipes. They were going to erase her completely? Rebrand everything as modern cuisine? Strip away her name, her legacy?" The pain in his voice was raw. He'd loved my mother deeply, built an empire on her talent, and now faced the reality that his second wife had spent years planning to destroy every trace of her? "I kept them safe," I said, gesturing to the notebook he still held. "Every recipe, every note, every technique she developed. I photographed all the pages years ago, stored them in multiple places. They can't erase her. I won't let them." He looked at me with something like wonder. "You've been protecting her memory all this time? While I was building the business, you were preserving what really mattered." I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind him that I'd been protecting her memory alone because he'd chosen to move on, to let Patricia rewrite history. But he looked so broken, so gutted by betrayal, that I couldn't bring myself to pile on more pain. Instead, I simply nodded. The room was nearly empty now, just a few lingering guests, hotel staff, and the security officers who'd remained in case of further incident. Nicole touched my arm. "We should go. You've done what you came to do. Let the lawyers handle the rest." She was right. There was nothing more for me to accomplish here tonight. The truth was out. The scheme was exposed. My father knew everything. Whatever came next, investigations and lawsuits and criminal charges, would unfold with or without my presence. I turned to leave, but my father's voice stopped me. "Rebecca, wait." I turned back. He was standing now, still clutching the recipe notebook like a lifeline. "Can we talk? Not tonight, but soon. I need to understand. I need to know how to make this right." The request was genuine, vulnerability clear in every word. I'd spent my entire life wanting him to see me, to acknowledge me, to choose me. Now he was asking for exactly that, and I didn't know if I had anything left to give. "Maybe," I said carefully, "but I'm not ready yet. Tonight was about stopping them from stealing everything Mom built. What happens between us? That's a longer conversation, one I'm not sure I'm ready to have." He nodded, accepting the boundary I'd set. "I understand, but I want you to know I'm grateful. You saved more than the business tonight. You saved your mother's legacy, and you showed me who I've been blind to for too long." His words were a start, just a start. Years of neglect and chosen ignorance couldn't be erased by one moment of recognition. But maybe eventually we could build something new from the rubble.